The Army Painter is my favorite hobby company in the entire world. My desk is literally full of Army Painter products, and it takes me from being an average painter to putting above tabletop standard models out into the tournament scene. Not only that, but the Army Painter has sponsored more competitive play than any other hobby company in the industry. They allow us to keep doing the things that we do. If you enjoy the Army Painter as much as I do, head over to thearmypainter.com where you can use the discount code ARTOWAR5 to get a discount on your next order. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Art of War. We have a really exciting one here today as we are going to be doing the top 10 worst detachments in the game.
Just the absolute cream of the crap. All right, it is the worst detachments you could possibly take. This is a bottom 10 list. This is not a top 10 list. This is how bad does it get at the bottom of that barrel?
Apparently really bad. We had to dig deep and we went through all the different factions, all the different detachments, and we found some that we really hadn't read in a long time.
Listen, the number one detachment takes its spot by literally making your army worse than if you had no detachment. That is hard to do, man. It's tough.
Impressive, frankly.
It is tough, but they are all garbage. So we're going to be ranting about some terribly written rules today.
Heck yeah, and if you enjoy this, definitely give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of that massively helps us grow. In addition, leave a comment below letting us know what you think the worst detachment in the game is. We'd love to hear your opinions. And in addition to that, if you want to see more content, not necessarily from the worst detachments in the game, but from some of the better ones, more competitive ones, check out the Worm at theworm.vhx.tv. There's a 3-day free trial, and in addition to that, you get access to content for every faction in the game, access to our loyalty program, as well as our international Discord communities. We'd love to see you there joining our community. Hopefully you'll click that button. So, we've got a bunch of bad detachments in the game. How did we decide what is exactly going to make the top 10 here? And there's quite a few factors.
Yeah, there's two really overarching factors that you can check for. One, how bad are the rules in this detachment? How non-existent, how niche, how not helpful are the actual rules in this detachment? And the second one is, what units do those rules go on? And sometimes you can have really good rules but they only go on the worst data sheets in the game. And so that detachment is bad for other reasons. Now, that being said, it would have felt really weird to put like Kroot Hunting Pack on this just because it buffs Kroot, because the rules are actually really good in Kroot Hunting Pack. It's just, they only buff Kroot. So generally it's going to be a mix of the two, but we gave priority to awful rules over just bad unit selection.
Yeah, just having rules that don't fundamentally do anything, they don't add anything to the army, and ultimately some of them might take away from the army.
And the worst of the worst, bad unit selection and bad rules, that's earning a high spot.
It's the top 5 right there
on the list.
Moving on to the honorable mentions here, we have the Thousand Suns Hexwarp Thrall Band.
Yeah, so this was the Grotmus detachment for Thousand Suns, and it had to compete with Cult of Magic, and it did not do a particularly good job.
Nope.
This is the only one on the list, the only detachment on the list that is using like Flow of Magic or Hallowed Ground or whatever Power Matrix, whatever you have to control objectives in midboard to turn on a section of the battlefield where you get your rules. And this is by far the worst of the bunch. A common weakness of these kind of armies is that you have to have that up in order to get any of your rules, and Hexwarp Thrallband is more reliant on it than most. Basically, every strat, every enhancement relies on you being in the flow of magic. So once you've lost control of the board, you don't have tools to gain it back. I'm sorry. You at best get half of a stratagem. You don't get the full strat, and sometimes you get none of the stratagem if you're not within the flow of magic. In addition, the benefits for being in the flow of magic, unlike in Grey Knights or in Necrons for their Canoptic Court, who get full rerolls to hit, you get buffs that exclusively overlap perfectly with what your army already gives you, so you receive almost no benefit. If you are not within your army's flow of magic, you reroll 1s to wound for psychic weapons only. Rubric Marines already give you reroll 1s to wound for shooting attacks.
Are those taken in Thousand Suns?
They're taken rather a lot in Thousand Suns, actually. And it's for all weapons, not just psychic weapons. And if your opponent's on an objective, you reroll all wounds. So this rule literally does not matter for any rubric units with attached characters, which is like 90% of your damage output outside of Magnus. And Magnus gets reroll 1s to wound. Sick. But if you're in the flow of magic, you lose that rule. It goes away, and you get +1 to wound for psychic weapons. Magnus, who is the autoest auto-include I've ever seen in this army, is a 6-inch aura of +1 to wound for psychic weapons. You can't be +2. So the Venn diagram of the buffs this army gives you and the buffs you receive from your datasheet rules, perfect circle. Perfect circle. Honestly, this would be higher if T-Sons weren't about to have a codex and theoretically some of the mistakes in this design weren't maybe accidentally going to be deleted. Who knows? Maybe they stick around like Armored Warhammer. Oops, spoiling a future detachment and become worse for doing it. But as it is, you basically have to get in the power matrix to receive any of your stratagems, any of your enhancements to have any kind of effect. And your detachment rule perfectly overlaps with the buffs you already received. It is a terrible detachment.
When I think about Thousand Sons, they're one of the armies towards the bottom of the list that wants to actually progressively stand on the objectives and get out there and engage in the middle of the table. They want their opponent to go out there and them to murder them instead. And a detachment, unlike, Canoptic Court, Warping Task Force, they want to go out there and touch those objectives. Thousand Sons?
No, they do not. And they're also an army that's very easy to bully, because you push them off the objectives and it's like a death spiral. Not only are you ahead on board position, you're ahead on primary scoring, but you've also taken all of their rules and thrown them in the trash. You said, you get your rules as long as you're in your deployment zone. Do not leave your deployment zone. Let me win the game for free. And they are required to.
Moving on into the top 10, we have the First Company Task Force, the most famous Space Marine detachment.
Yeah, not for good reason. So the theme of this detachment is once per game. And that can kind of work sometimes if the once per game effects are particularly strong.
Really strong.
They have to be really strong. They're not that great here, honestly. All the enhancements provide a small effect to the bearer, like +1 attack or a 5 of feel no pain for just the bearer. And then once a game, give something to the unit, whether that's +1 attack or a 5 of feel no pain, which is decent, right? A 5 of feel no pain once a game for an entire unit of like assault terminators is not terrible, but it certainly isn't good. And then we get into the strats, and the strats are not great. All of them key off of veteran in some way, whether that's blade guard, stern guard, vanguard vets, or terminators. And I don't know if you've paid attention, but that's a bit of a selection issue, right? We said that that's one of the ways that a detachment can be bad. Well, those data sheets just aren't particularly good. And then the strats are just okay. The reason that this detachment, by the way, doesn't end up around like number 4 or number 5 on this list, given it has selection issues and all of its rules are once a game, is because of the strat for when you are charged, -1 damage in combat. You can actually do some really good things with that. The rest of the detachment is fairly mediocre. It's like that and a 5 up feel no pain once a game on your unit. Not amazing. It has the worst version of go back into reserves where you have to immediately show back up on the following turn. That's not great. You really want to go up and then rapid ingress down later so you can get some good movement and engage off it. It's just pretty mediocre with like 3 once a game abilities that are pretty decent, and then -1 damage if you are charged, which is still pretty restrictive, right? It only applies to the veteran units, and it only applies if you are charged. But at least at the end of those hoops, you get a good rule.
The other thing is that if you are a Space Marine player, you're very lucky that you have a billion other detachments to choose from. If this was an army like, Drukhari that's stuck in an index right now, and this was their detachment, you can bet it would have been higher because that is the only option you have to play it, and it's garbage.
Yeah, it also kind of sucks that their detachment rule is a one and done effect. Because detachment rule is like the biggest thing for your army, right? It's an always on, well, not this time. It's an always on effect that just applies to all of your units all the time. And this is just once a game when you call Oath, you also reroll wounds. That is atrocious because not only is it once a game, but it's piggybacking on Oath. You don't need help killing the Oath target.
No.
If it was once a game, you pick a unit and you get reroll wounds against it, that would be better because you could at least target 2 separate things on the same turn. But no, the thing you were going to kill anyway, you were going to like super kill, and then you're done with the detachment rule. You don't get one now.
There should have been some way to reload it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Something like pick a target every turn and you reroll wounds against your oath target every turn honestly wouldn't be like the worst thing in the world if you made it like in melee or something. This detachment needs a lot of help, and so I'd be willing to give it a rule like that.
Moving on to number 9, we have the Black Templars Grotmus detachment, Wrathful Procession.
Yeah, I was super disappointed with this one. I'm gonna be upfront with you.
You were wrathful about it.
I read through it, and the detachment rule looks mediocre. And I was like, all right, let's get to the strats. We got some good stuff here. Literally nothing in the stratagem. Like, you read through all the strats, and there's just like nothing there. You have precision in combat. That strat already exists.
Do you struggle in combat anyway?
No, with this detachment, you very well might. There's just a series of not good stratagems, right? Reroll ones to hit for a CP and ignore hit mods. Sure, I suppose I could have that. You're a far cry from good stratagems like Lance and +1 AP or things of that nature. The detachment rule is pretty much the only good part of this detachment. It is, you pick for all infantry or mounted units in your army, you get either +2 to move, +1 advance, or 5-up invuln against range attacks specifically, or +1 strength to melee weapons. I know I said this was the only good part. That is because I'm grading on a curve. That is not a good detachment rule. It is actively a bad detachment rule. You have to decide between the 3 of those. Now, you can stay in one for the whole game if you really feel like +1 strength is... If you really feel like that's doing it for you, you can stick in that one. Or the +2 move, you can stay in that one. You just don't want to. You have an enhancement for fight first once a game, and I've now said all the good rules in this detachment. There's just nothing here. It's just like a wasteland of rules that don't matter and don't ever come up and are kind of just mid.
Yeah, when you think about a melee detachment, you're looking for advance and charge access. You're looking for fallback and charge. You're looking for big combat buffs, like you mentioned, Lance, extra AP, lots of stacking things, +1 damage even.
Some kind of defense as well to let you get in, something to force your opponent out.
Full fight on death.
Full fight on death would be sick, but unfortunately, no. You don't get access to any of those things, and you do get +2 move, but like Marine melee units aren't that good, right? You have access to Sword Brethren who are expensive and are not durable in this detachment. They are fairly fragile, but you're still going to take them because what else are you taking? Assault Terminators, Blade Guard, Jump Pack Intercessors at Strength 5? That'll show them. Like, yeah, I'm a melee detachment now, guys. Like, you compare this to the other Black Templar detachment, the Righteous Crusaders, and it is like shocking how little you get compared to Righteous Crusaders. And Righteous Crusaders is not like a top 10 detachment. It is a solid workhorse detachment that is like pretty solidly like BC tier. And this is just not even close to the amount of rules you get in Righteous Crusaders. It's just not a good detachment. I played it twice. I didn't want to play it. I don't want to play it now. Nobody wanted to see that it be played. It just might as well not exist.
Didn't open up a new play style. It's trying to do similar things that Black Templars do based on their data sheets, and it's not adding anything additional.
Exactly. All right, so, we just wait till the Codex, and maybe we can all forget that Wrathful Procession even exists. I know I already have.
Moving on to number 8, we have the Annihilation Legion from Necrons. This is the Necron melee detachment, and you'd be surprised that Necrons actually have a melee detachment because you've never seen it on the table. And frankly, it is basically saved from being higher up on this list because Games Workshop added an entire second qualifier or rule onto its detachment rule. So first of all, the detachment rule it was published with is this. You get, for your Destroyer cult models and your Flayed ones, which are very few data sheets, you get access to reroll charges. But,
wow.
Jack, if your opponent is below half strength, the thing that you're charging is below half strength. So
below half strength.
Seriously wounded.
The thing that you really need to go and kill.
Mostly crippled. You get +1 to that charge. That was a detachment roll.
Not like a damage buff, just +1 to your charge if you've crippled them.
If they're already crippled and you're just finishing the mob, you better get in there, baby, and murder them.
So bad.
Now, Games Workshop has added an additional part because the detachment was basically written as if Destroyer cult models were melee only. So there were no shooting buffs in here whatsoever for Locust Destroyers or Heavy Locust Destroyers. But Games Workshop realized, okay, hey, we forgot about those guys. We're going to add in, and they added in that when you target the closest eligible with a ranged attack, you get +1 AP, which is not bad. Closest eligible is pretty annoying, but still, +1 AP on those profiles, okay. And Midic unit loves that. The regular Locust Destroyers love that. It's cool.
Are we at the end of good rules?
No, we got two. There are two. One is on a 3-up, you can trap something in combat by preventing it from falling back.
Wow.
Quite cute on a Scorpec Lord.
That is quite cute on a Scorpec Lord. Is that an enhancement?
That is an enhancement. That's the best enhancement. The other ones are meme-worthy and silly. But they have a cool strat, which is Insanity's Ire. It's 1 CP. If one of your Destroyer Cult or Flayed One units have lost a model, you can go ahead and make a normal move, getting as close as possible to that unit. But this is not a Blood Surge move, so you cannot get within engaged range. It's the only stratagem I believe that is like this, where you get closer but cannot enter engaged range.
It's pretty strong. It's pretty strong. I think Black Templars might have that as well. Where you just
it's like old school.
Yeah, you just walk up to them and are like, are you done with your shooting phase? And they're like, no.
Boom, you're dead.
Dude, I've read that detachment like 10 times because I keep wanting to make melee Necrons work. And I'm like, I forgot what's in Annihilation Legion. Let me go check that. Oh my God.
Where's my sustain? Where's my lethals? Lance, extra AP in combat, +1 damage, nothing.
Advance and charge.
Advance and charge. There's no speed buffs here. There's basically very few durability buffs and or combat buffs. It's a barren wasteland of ideas.
Yes, yeah. There are some
barren as the Destroyer mind.
truly bad melee detachments on this list where there's just like no relevant rules to do anything that you want.
What is the purpose? And then, like I said, there was no shooting buffs besides that one particular addition to the detachment rule. So you're trying to buff a bunch of narrow units, Flayed Ones and Destroyer models, and it basically doesn't do that even.
And the only good rule in the detachment, other than the +1 AP, which, sure, is an enhancement. And you point at a guy and you're like, don't let him trap you in combat. Your opponent's like, gotcha.
It's only on a 3-up. It's not even just done.
Yeah, so even if you've set it up, they're like, I'm going to try and fall back. And you're like, haha, but oh God, that's a 2. But most of the time, they just won't let you set it up because it's the biggest, most telegraphed play I've ever seen.
There's nothing redeeming about this one. It is bad. Moving on to number 7 is the Aldari Grotmus detachment, the Armored Warhost.
So this one was pretty bad before the Codex came out, but it suffers a lot from the Codex coming out. They said beforehand that the Grotmus detachments were written with the codexes in mind, and I just cannot see that being true.
This one doesn't seem to be the case.
So the way this one works is it basically only buffs your flying vehicles, which is most of them, just not Warwalkers, which would actually want some of these buffs. But the flying vehicles in Eldar suck a lot, actually. In the Index, they were better, but they definitely wanted the Warhost rules over the Armored Warhost. But now they most of them just got nerfed. Fire Prisms are worse, right? Night Spinners are worse. Warwalkers are worse. They're all worse. They all just got worse. And so that makes me not want to take them as much. But then the overlap between the Codex's rules and the detachment rules are the most cannibalizing thing possible. So the entire reason why Armored Warhost exists, and all it does really is let you advance and do things with your vehicles, right?
Cool.
You gain assault on your weapons and you can reroll the advance roll. Okay, theoretically in a vacuum, that's pretty neat. And then the best stratagem is you can advance and disembark after you've already advanced. One slight little snag, which is that the Codex Eldari has a better way of doing this baked into the Codex. You have agile tokens, so you can just make your vehicle normal move d6 plus 1 inches further. And then you can just shoot afterwards or get out afterwards without having to take Armored Warhost that doesn't really buff anything anyway. So you have a bad army selection because you're taking exclusively units that you really just don't want to take. Their flying vehicles kind of stinko. Your enhancements are all based around turning your characters into tech marines, but it also has bad strats. Spend a CP to get real hit, wound, damage, 1 roll of each, and you have to spend before you shoot the weapon.
So you might just hit and wound with them anyway.
You might just hit and wound with them anyway, because a lot of these things are 2 shots. You can get a reroll to wound after you've rolled the dice for CP. Why do you need to spend it ahead of time? The only good rule in here is -2 to charge if your opponent charges you, and 6-inch deep strike on flying vehicles, and then you can get out 6 inches away if it's a transport. You're not going to do any of that. Eldar units are very deliverable on their face. You don't need to be deep striking them down, and Eldar vehicles are also gigantic. You're not wedging that anywhere. The Wave Serpent's the size of my head. Okay, like this doesn't fit anywhere.
I'll make it fit. If it sits, it fits, Jack.
If it sits, it fits. So very bad detachment. Bad units, perfect codex overlap, so the codex just completely invalidates it for more than one reason, and bad effects. Great confluence of rules.
Moving on to number 6, we have the Adeptus Mechanicus Explorator Maniple. You may never have seen or heard of this detachment. And guess what? It's the worst AdMech detachment out of a bunch of not great detachments, which is saying a lot. And so let me paint you a picture here, Jack, okay?
Okay.
What if we based the detachment rule, all of the enhancements, and almost every single stratagem around a single objective marker that you were going to pick at the start of your command phase?
I would say that you essentially get one of these buffs because your opponent's going to put one thing on the objective, and as soon as you've dealt with it, you no longer have strats or a detachment roll.
Or my units have to be on that objective, and then they die.
That sounds good, too.
So this detachment gives you reroll 1s to wound if you are targeting an enemy unit on that objective, or you yourself are on that objective. Okay, reroll 1s to wound, not the worst thing. But it's on one place that is telegraphed to your opponent. They're probably not going to put their best units there. Then all the enhancements are buffed off of this, and then the stratagem. It has one of the worst stratagems you've ever heard, which is that if for 2 CP, an AdMech unit disembarks from a transport, already narrowing what you could potentially pick, ranged attacks only, not combat. Okay, disembarks, shoots at a unit that is on this specific objective, acquisition objective marker, and then you get reroll wounds.
That seems pretty...
Or +1 to wound, excuse me.
+1 to wound. Not reroll wounds would be better.
You get reroll wounds from the transport. So
Yes.
you get reroll wounds, then +1 to wound. And you're like, okay, I did some damage with one particular unit against this thing that was on the objective. 2 CP, what are we even doing out here?
Oh, it's not for your army against the objective. It's one unit.
No, it's that unit that disembarked.
Oh, they have to disembark, too.
Yes, they have to disembark.
That's a lot of hoops to jump through.
And that's just one of the many things that's going on with this amazing detachment. So ultimately, the only saving grace, the only reason this is not higher is because there is a 1 CP stratagem in which you pick a second acquisition objective marker, which means you get 2 of them. And 2 is the point where you can get some amount of mileage out of this. And the second saving grace is that you can buff any of the different AdMech units with this. It's not restricted to like random units that you don't want to take. Those are the only 2 silver linings here, which is why it is not in the top 5. But man, it could have easily been down there.
It definitely could have. Let me put it this way. Renegade Raiders is a solid detachment. Nothing too crazy. In my opinion, it's like B tier, probably.
It's a damn solid one.
It's a damn solid detachment. It only benefits against objectives, but it benefits against every objective on the board. In addition, it provides you with better benefits against those objectives, and also only like half of their rules key off of you being on an objective. And even there, the fact that it only works against objectives is a serious downside. Explorator Maniple provides worse buffs against fewer objectives.
And you have to ditch your entire CP economy when AdMech doesn't have very many ways to get additional CP consistently. You have to ditch that 5 in the whole game to get access to the second objective marker to even try and make something happen here.
Yeah, just don't. Listen, here's what you do. You take Kodiaz.
and my opponent has an ability.
An ability that makes a CP. And then you're gaming.
It's just not it. Why Games Workshop? Why?
I do not know.
Moving on into number 5, we have the Hearthband detachment from Leagues of Votann. This is their Grotmist detachment. I've never put this thing on the table. I never will, out of principle, because it disgusts me. And I'll explain exactly why. First of all, this is it might be the only detachment where the only other existing detachment, which is the Index detachment, had to get its detachment rule nerfed by going into the army rule just to try and even remotely make this one playable.
Yeah, because you look at Hearthband and you're like, well, this doesn't give me 4 judgment tokens.
Or additional CP or 6 amazing stratagems. It gives me nothing. Yeah. And here, let me explain that nothing. So first of all, if you shoot the closest eligible unit or attack something in engage range, you get reroll 1s on any of your units. Reroll 1s is not bad.
To hit.
Rear ones to hit.
Okay.
Not everything. It's not bad. However, it's close as eligible, so it's not really that easy to proc on shooting, and then in combat, it's a nice buff. The second half, which is +1 EP, only procs on your Hearthguard, which is one single datasheet, as well as your units that are led by Uthar or a Call, which is precisely one datasheet, which is the basic troop unit. What are we doing here? Can we get any more narrow than this? What is going on?
It's 2 data sheets, one of which is not known for fighting.
Or doing anything.
Or doing anything other than being split up and holding objectives. That's it.
Why does it need +1 AP?
Hearthkin warriors doing anything ever.
So that's the detached rule. The enhancement are all overcosted and niche. Then you have 6 stratagems. There is one good one, which is 2 CP +1 damage in combat. That is good on Berserks. But remember, the Berserks aren't getting the additional AP, and there's not benefiting from really anything else here. All 4 of the 6 stratagems key off of very particular units, either Hearthguard, unit led by Uthar Call, an infantry unit specifically, or something that is in Deep Strike, which, once again, only Hearthguard can get Deep Strike if they're led by a character with a particular upgrade, or they have the upgrade themselves. It's like, how many hoops are we jumping through to get mediocre rules out here?
Also on units you don't want to take. Like Hearthguard, 10-man Hearthguard are so like, I don't know, a year and a half ago?
They're index.
Yeah.
That's index days. It just hasn't existed since then. They don't have armor contempt in this one. They don't have any of the additional benefits that they're going to get. They have a really mediocre shooting strat for them. This detachment combines bad rules with really niche application, and it also got a different detachment nerfed. Technically.
Yeah, because the detachment now Oathband only gives you 2, but the army rule gives you 2.
Exactly.
So Oathband still is 4, but Oathband basically had to loaner 2 of them over to Hearthband to try and get it to do anything. And Hearthband will not. It will absolutely not.
It is a mess of a detachment, and I just cannot see how they make this playable. Moving on to number 4, we have the Space Wolf Grotmus detachment. It is the Champions of Fenris.
Yeah, so carrying on from the Hearthband, this is a detachment I have never run, and I will never run it, same as Richard. And as far as I can tell, nobody cares. So what does it do? Well, what it does is if your opponent is within 3 inches of you at the end of the charge phase, you get to charge them, right? They don't have to have made a charge move, but you know, they have to be within 3 inches of you for you to do this. This is your detachment rule, by the way. This is all your army does, is if they try to contest an objective but forget to pre-measure, you can charge them. Okay, sure. I guess it's only infantry and walker get to do this, so you can't even take it on like Thundercav or anything like that. That's not great, but it also has a secondary benefit. Wow, 2 detachment rules in 1. It gives your Terminators +1 OC. Terminators are terrible. Yes! They are so bad. They're so overpriced, so anemic on damage, and this detachment does not help them in that regard. This detachment has one relevant rule. It has an enhancement that's 30 points that extends the 3-inch heroic range into a 6-inch heroic range. And that one unit is decent. But let's go ahead and just think. What are we using this on? Blade Guard? Blade Guard kind of suck. This detachment is basically the Black Templars one if you didn't have access to Sword Brethren, i.e. like an actually decent combat unit. You're a combat army that has to entirely rely on Terminators and Blade Guard and like
Wolfen?
Vanguard Vets? Wolfen, I guess? These are bad data sheets. You don't have access to any others, and you don't really have a way to make them hurt at all. Like, legitimately, people can walk up to you, let you charge them, and like, what does it matter? You're just going to bounce. There are no relevant rules in this book. It's just a wasteland of like incredibly niche, mediocre rules that will never come up or matter at all.
It sounds solid.
Listen,
I've never seen anybody play this yet.
You should never see anyone play this. It's a cry for help. Champions of Russ used to be on this, like it would have made this list in the past. It was atrocious on release. I don't know why both Space Wolf detachments were terrible on release, but they both were. And they buffed the heck out of Champions of Russ. They made it so it's easier to get the saga abilities completed. You can complete them at the end of each turn instead of just at the end of, at the start of your turn or whatever. And they also made it so you start with one, which is actually super essential because Warrior Born is like impossible to get up and also is gatekeeping your advance and charge behind it. So that turned Champions of Rust from like a bottom 10 detachment to actually quite good. I actually think Champions of Rust is great, and it's very much underseen. Champions of Fenris, on the other hand, I don't know what it would need. It was such a clean change for Champions of Rust to make it good, and Champions of Fenris would need a complete overhaul. I just don't even know where to start with this detachment.
They basically made the identity of the detachment a cute trick that you'll probably pull off once, maybe, and they made that the entire value proposition of the detachment. Unlike Hearthband, where at least I get reroll ones against the closest eligible stuff, like that's already way better than what is here.
Yeah. I just don't know what your opponent's going to be scared of with some Terminators that are OC2, like charging them. It's not going to do too much. You don't have rerolls. You just have like Oath and Logan Grimnar once a game if you want. You're going to include him in the Terminator attachment, I suppose. But like, man, that is pretty anemic. I mean,
It's a hard sell.
if you explain this to your opponent and they know how to use a tape measure, they should just never be caught by this ever. So I don't even know. How do we have 3 worst detachments on this list?
We do, though. Moving on to number 3. It is the new Emperor's Children Codex detachment, Slaanesh's Chosen. And in this detachment, it's called Internal Rivalries. It is all about character units. And if you wanted to find a more niche rule than the one we just discussed with Champions of Fenris, welcome to the Slaanesh Chosen, because first of all, your character units, only
your character units,
get to ignore movement, advance, and charge modifiers,
which exist
are super rare.
basically nowhere.
Super, super rare. The game is really not based around those. They're extremely niche. Then there's a very convoluted rule whereby if you pick a favored unit, this favored unit, it starts as your warlord unit. If it kills something, if any other character unit kills something, they become the favored unit.
Yes. While you're favored, what do you get?
You get reroll wounds.
So what you're telling me is that you get a damage buff after you've already attacked your opponent.
You just nailed it.
And would have needed the damage buff for that attack.
You really probably wanted it.
Okay, that timing is that might be the single worst written rule in the game. You get it after you need it. Spend a CP, gain lance on your weapons after you've fought. That's like the equivalent, right?
That's what it says here. You get those reroll wounds on your favorite unit, and it's awesome. Then you look at the enhancements here, like what is even going on? They're all niche. Then you look at the stratagems. There's one good one, and the only one that doesn't do an additional benefit if you're the favored unit, which all the other ones do, and that's you get sustained. So there's one combat buff. Sweet. Can only be on character units, so you better be led by characters.
Like, that's it, right, though?
And how many, Emperor's Children's a relatively elite army. How many units are led by characters? Like 4, maybe?
Not that many.
Not that many.
I mean, imagine if there was a strat that was like, all right, after your Rogel Dorn shoots, its weapons gain twin-linked after it's shot.
That's when I want it, Jack.
That's when I need it. I need it. I mean, the cycle is going to be you charge in, you kill something, you become favored, which means you are now able to do damage to things in the future.
Your opponent kills it.
And your opponent kills it because it's an Emperor's Children unit in combat. It has to be right in front of them.
What is going on? And then when you look at the strats, as I said, 5 of them have a additional benefit if you're the favored unit. None of the first parts are that amazing. And then the second part that they add, like one of them is a blood surge move at D6. If you're favored, you reroll the result.
Wow.
It's like, oh, wow. Like, how many hoops are we jumping through to get a mediocre stratagem here? Like, come on, what's going on?
Yeah, I just don't know. I mean, the main problem is you just cannot keep your favored units alive. You just can't. This army is fragile. And it puts your units to get the favored buff in front of your opponent. So your opponent's gonna be like, that's your cool unit? And you're like, yeah, dead. Okay, back to you. And then you go through the hoops again. You kill something with a unit that has no buffs. And then you get reroll to wounds again. By the way, which reroll to wound is what the infractors give you. The melee infantry unit?
Yeah, the ones that you put the Lord characters in?
Yeah, that's what they give you. They give you reroll wounds. So you already have reroll wounds. Why do I want that?
I don't. And neither do Emperor's Children players. They found other homes, but not this one.
Yeah, coterie of the conceited for sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Moving on to number 2, we have the Custodes Detachment, the No Maiden Vigil. Every Custodes player's least favorite detachment that no one asked for.
Nobody asked for this detachment. I don't understand. We are at the truly vile detachments at this point. This detachment combines everything that you've seen in the previous detachments all into one. It has rules that only benefit 3 data sheets. Vigilators, Witch Seekers, and Prosecutors, none of which are doing heavy lifting. So it has a very niche unit selection. That's a huge issue. But it also comes with a suite of exclusively niche rules, right? Every stratagem is super mediocre and only applies to those bad data sheets. And then if your opponent is a Psyker and it's Tuesday and they're battle shocked, you get a second benefit that makes the strat mediocre still. It's not good. My favorite is the enhancement that only has a secondary effect against battle shocked Psyker units.
Very
not
common.
battle shocked units, not Psyker units, both. And it only works it makes a Knight Centura better in combat.
That's why I want her.
That's where I need her. She gets in there. The detachment rule is you have to have Sisters of Silence units within 12 inches of your opponent, and they either need to be below starting strength or a Psyker, and then they take a battle shock check. What? If they're below half strength, it's at -1. But that's not in addition to the battle shock check they have to take for being below half strength. So somehow I have to go out there with Sisters of Silence, which are like the least killy units in the game. Would you like a melee unit with 2 attacks a model? Or would you like your premier shooting unit? It has a flamer. Okay? That's what we're working with here. I want you to know where we're at. And then strats are just, like +1 shot to your flamers. But if your opponent is battle shocked or a Psyker, +2. It's just what's going. You get to pick sustained or lethal. But if you do that strat, your unit can only target Psykers. I'm going insane here. I don't even think this beats Psychic Heavy armies.
It might not.
Because legitimately the best rule in here against Psykers has nothing to do with any of the enhancements, stratagems, rule, anything. The best part of this detachment against Psykers is just the datasheet rule on your Sister of Silence. It gives them a 3-up, feel no pain against them. Even there, I think because you do so little damage that I think you actually heal your opponent when you attack them. I think they'll just get through that 3-up, feel no pain eventually, and then you die. You're not high OC. Your models aren't scary. Your opponent can just walk into you and leave you struggling in a corner, trying to, get out. Like, they can literally just Big Brother you and put their hand on your forehead, and you can't do a damn thing about it. You can't do damage. And anytime your opponent has a bolter or a warp flamer or something that isn't actually a psychic weapon, you just fold like wet cardboard to that. Like, we were originally going to put this into Thousand Suns, and we were going to see, hey, if we hyper tailor for a Psyker army and we happen to play into a Psyker army, what does it look like? And then I looked at the Warp Flamer profile and realized what it would look like is me getting tabled at light speed.
Through that 3-up, feel no pain.
Through the feel no pain. Well, the Warp Flamers aren't psychic.
That's
Die. They're melee, they're fists, right? When they're doing honorable fisticuffs to you, which you cannot hope to match, by the way, they will beat you up in combat. Those are not psychic. And even with their psychic weapons, right, you have a 3-up feel no pain on 1 wound models. All their psychic weapons are like 2-3 D3 damage. What are we doing?
Dying.
Dying is what we're
Losing.
doing. Yeah, losing. This detachment is so bad because it is so narrowly tailored in unit selection, what targets you want to see, and then at the end of all of that, it gives you bad rules.
But that's not the worst detachment yet.
Not the worst detachment in the game, because this detachment does make your army better for taking it. Not by much, by this much, by tiny little this much. But it does theoretically give you additional options. It doesn't make your army actively worse, unlike number 1.
Moving on to number 1 here, we have the Imperial Agents Veiled Blade Elimination Force. And if you're wondering why this list wasn't full of Imperial Agents detachments, well, guess what? That's because we limited it to 1 per faction. Otherwise, it would have flooded this list. And we know you already don't like that, so we tried to be as diverse as possible. But this one, Veiled Blade Elimination Force, the Imperial Agents Grotmus detachment, we don't know why it was written.
Who is this for?
Nobody, not even the agents that benefit from it.
I don't know, man. All right, we're going to read the whole thing.
We're going to read the whole thing because it is just spectacular in how abysmal it is. I couldn't conceive of a detachment as bad as this.
It is a monument to
you have to try.
Man's folly and hubris.
So here we go. We got Extremist Sanction. This allows your assassins, the 4 of them, to use their once per game abilities twice. The assassins that are famously known for being able to survive when they get close to their opponent.
Yeah, they are toughness 4 with 4 wounds and 4 up invuln. You're not using Soulless Horror generally twice. You're definitely not using Overkill twice. That dude is a missile. He goes in and he dies, and that's what happens. Shieldbreaker, at least I guess you can use twice because your opponent literally can't get to him, but you might not even use it once because the Vindicare is not good. And then you don't even get a twice per battle ability on the Calidus because the Calidus doesn't have one. So guess what? Left off the list. No special rule for the Calidus for you.
Now, the second part is the reason why we said that this detachment actually makes your army actively worse. And the reason is that when mustering your army, when you take the assassins, you must pay for their respective enhancement. And you must. It is an enhancement. So,
it's holding you at gunpoint. You have to take it.
So if you want to take the detachment that buffs your assassins, you have to spend a crap ton of extra points for each one that you take because their enhancements are 40, 40, 35, 45 points. Woo! What are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, like, if these were all 10 points, okay, fine.
The assassins are not broken or crazy.
Some of them are like 5 points, like worth 5 points. They're an average point cost of 40 points. If you take this detachment, I think the best play is just to not take assassins.
Which are the thing that benefits from it.
Yeah, it's the only thing that benefits from it, and it's what all the strats are keyed around. But if you take it, you're just playing an 1,840 point list. You just are. You're just spending 160 points on these. All right, let's go through them.
There we go. Take the first one. All decoy targets.
Decoy targets. Is this worth making your Calidus 140 points? All right. Twice per battle in your movement phase, you can select. Oh, they gave her a once a game ability so they can make it twice. Cool. Twice per battle in your movement phase, you can select one other friendly infantry model that is on the battlefield and not within engage range or one of our enemy units. The selected model is destroyed. And this model is removed from the battlefield and set up again as close as possible where that destroyed model was and not within engage range or one or more enemy units. This ability cannot be used more than once in the same battle round in case you wanted to gat 2 of your own models in the same battle round.
Two would be too strong for sure. Now, Trazen the Infinite is famous for killing your own character models. This is an even worse version because I have to pay a lot more for it.
Well, you have to pay 40, and then if you use this twice, what are you replacing 20-point models?
No, so you're paying like 60 80? Points minimum.
You're paying like 80 for this, like 60 to 80 points minimum for this because she gats your own models in order to take their place. You know where this would be good? Is in Yunari. If you could take this in Yunari and kill your own models. But even that's in the wrong phase. Damn it. Even in my, 40 points to kill your own models, huh? The Calidus can already teleport, bro. The Calidus can already teleport. Why are we killing our own models to move around?
The Calidus is there to provide a vector and stay safe. Not to do whatever shenanigans this is designed to do.
Killing your own models. You're paying 40 points for the privilege.
Then we have Esoteric Explosives.
Truly esoteric.
Goes on the Calexis. Each time the model is targeted with the grenade stratagem, a 1 mortal wound is inflicted for each roll of a 3-up instead of 4-up.
Not make it free. Not do anything. Just when you spend for grenades on the Calexis, a thing you will not do that often. You're just not going. You don't grenade off the Calexis that often. Occasionally you will, but not very often. And it does an average of 1 extra mortal wound for 40 points?
Yeah, and she used to be able to 3-inch deep strike, which at least let you easily get within range of the target you wanted. With 6-inch deep strike, it's a heck of a lot harder if they have any amount of screens.
I mean, even there, it's 40 points for +1 mortal every other game.
This could be 5 points, and even then, it's like, I don't really even want to spend the 5 points.
Yeah. If you throw grenades off a Calexis once every other game, which I think is about accurate, you're paying 80 points per mortal.
This is like the least value per rule that you could possibly get.
I've never seen a worse version of this. Damn it. If it was like you mortal on 3s and you grenade for free and it was like 25 points, I could see it. But man, that thing's, 125 points now?
Then we have Intraneural Biotech, 35 points on your Eviscer Assassin. Once per battle round, you can target the model with heroic intervention or counteroffensive stratagems for 0 CP, and you can do so even if something else already used them.
So you can heroic or interrupt on an Eviscer, a guy who dies to a bolt pistol and a grenade. Just for 35, that makes him like 155 points? So that he can interrupt for free? World Eaters can slot him in shooting. He's not making it to that phase of the game, my man.
Oh my god.
Or they just start there. Or they just start their attacks there. You're agents of the Imperium. You don't have melee units. They're just going to start on the Eviscer.
Coming in at the last one at 45 points, the most expensive, Micro Melt-A-Rounds, Vindicare Assassin. The model's Exodus Rifle has the Anti-Monster 4+ and Anti-Vehicle 4+ abilities. Ooh.
This guy's like the price of a Predator at this point. And instead of las cannons, he's firing like one shot. That still wounds monsters and vehicles on 4s.
He's going to really dev wound them, baby. God forbid you don't roll the 4+. Why are these so expensive? Why?
Why is he like 150 points for one shot that still stay hit and it still has to wound? And it does like, D3 plus 3 damage? Dude, for 155 points, you can take a Predator with 3 las cannons. One of them's twin linked. It rerolls wounds and damage. What are we doing?
Now, we could go here and torture you even more by reading the stratagems, but we don't need to. I think we've already convinced you that not only is this detachment the worst in the game, but it is the worst thing that has ever been imagined in the Warhammer detachment sphere.
The sick part of the stratagems is that, okay, you look at this detachment rule and you look at the abilities next to it, and you say, well, I guess I'm not taking any assassins. Well, then you don't get half of every single strat here. I'm sure there's like one that applies to everything. Sure, good for it. But 4 of the stratagems have a second half that only works on a specific assassin, which means you are taking those assassins if you want this detachment to be more than a blank sheet of paper.
But even then, a blank sheet of paper wouldn't hurt you so bad. You wouldn't have to pay so many points for a blank piece of paper, Jack. This one is a complete miss, and for a faction like Imperial Agents that only had one competitive detachment, this is really the one that should have been one of the top Grotmus detachments if you were really trying to help factions. And it's not. It is actively hurting Imperial Agents. You will never see this except for the most casual, fluffy, don't care about winning list you've ever seen.
I mean, you have to actively want to lose. Like, you have to be like, yeah, that feels good.
I want to start my list basically down 200 points.
Yeah, it's great. What they needed to do with this detachment is they needed to scrap the detachment rule completely and instead make a completely different one. Just a completely different detachment rule, full stop.
Stuff gets better if they're near assassins.
You get to take like 2 of each kind of assassin or something, right? That would do it. That would help. And then you have to make the extremist abilities on every assassin 0 points. Actually, 0 points.
You just get cool buffs for them.
You just get cool buffs. If they did that, if their detachment rule was you can double use those abilities, and you could take 2 of each assassin, and the extremist abilities were on all of them, and 0 points, you would have a bad but interesting detachment. As is, you have a horrible like
catastrophe of a detachment.
Just who wrote this? Who wrote this?
Why? Save your time, Games Workshop. What? Oh boy.
Oh my god. That would be a cool detachment if they did those changes, but they would have to literally hand you 200 points back and let you break Epic Hero, and they're not going to do that. Oh my god.
Well, this was our top 10. Hopefully you enjoyed this list. If you did, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of that massively helps us grow. In addition, leave a comment below letting us know what you think of our list. What do you think are the worst detachments in the games? Which ones didn't we mention? There were several more on our list that we didn't mention here. but there's plenty of less than ideal detachments that you might find out there hanging around. So hope you enjoyed this video. If you do want to see more content from us, check out The Worm at theworm.vhx.tv. It's a 3-day free trial, and on top of that, you get access to our international Discord community, our loyalty program, as well as content for every faction in the game. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We appreciate your support, and we hope we didn't give you too many nightmares with this tier list. So long for now.
Bye-bye.